Okay, hi guys. So this video is I think it's gonna be titled something like pendulums, boundaries, and creating your best life, or pendulums, boundaries, and lessons. So this is just gonna be about the lessons that I've learned this week, and sort of just things that I'm just remembering that should help a lot if you guys are interested in just learning about pendulums and the way maybe I'll name it something like the quantum field too, because I'm just going to talk about a little bit about everything that I've been thinking about this week. And I'm always thinking about this stuff because it's just natural for me to think about these kind of things in regards to the way I'm living my life, right? And I like to not like overanalyze, but I love discovering new things and being even more secure with my boundaries so that I can be even better at creating my life, right? And we're always learning. So anyway, and it's also a personal story video. So I've got a few personal stories in here, and if you like this style of video, let me know, because it's just going to be kind of off the cuff. So the first story I have for you guys is I was on the phone with my dad, okay? And this is actually has to do with pendulums, okay? She's been trying to get me to pet her. So this is basically has to do with, so if you don't know what pendulums are, it's when there's a certain, basically a societal idea about something, or something that's very well known, that, for example, let me think of one that could be considered a good example. So for example, just age is a pendulum, right? The fact that we age and we get, like, you know, we have sort of things like diseases, or, you know, things that happen to us as we age. You know, pendulums are sort of some sort of idea that's overly, like, widely accepted, basically. Sorry, I was trying to explain that in the best way possible. So and Vadim Zeland's book, reality transfer surfing, actually talks about pendulums a lot if you want to learn more about it, okay? And I really recommend that book because it is informative. It explains a lot of stuff having to do with the quantum field, okay? So I want to just say, like, as I was speaking to my dad, I noticed him saying, and they have these guests right now at their house, and I think they're in their 80s. So I noticed him saying things like, well, they're 80, like I was asking how's it going and stuff, and he's like, oh, well, they're 80, so, you know, they don't like, you know, I'm not sure if they're going to be up for that, or, you know, things like that. He was sort of hinting at the fact that age makes people slow down, and just things that are really widely accepted, right? But on this channel, like, or, you know, in my life, basically, I've talked about this, like, I don't accept that age makes you slow down or not be able to do things or hinders you in some way, right? And what I basically thought while my dad was saying these things was, I'm not going to accept that pendulum he's talking about, because it's really good to set these sort of like mental, energetic boundaries, and this makes you a better creator. Because I was recognizing how many times, like, do I not say something when I don't agree with someone? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you notice in your life, how many times you say something when you're not, or sorry, how many times you don't say something when you're not in agreement with what they say? And this happens quite a lot when you're just in passing, or you're not really focused on like correcting people or whatever. And what ends up happening is your boundaries kind of get sloppy, and the way that well, not only do your boundaries have sort of fuzzy edges at some points, but you could also energetically sort of accept what they're saying. So it's really important to be very careful about like what you're kind of accepting, because you're not saying no to it. Does that make sense? Like, if I hadn't said what I believe in regards to that, to what he was saying, then I might have sort of like, it was almost like leaving the idea open-ended, like I could accept what he was saying about age, which I don't accept it. I don't believe it at all, right? And so what I exactly said, and what you can say to sort of it's like setting a parameter for knowing that you're not going to accept these sort of pendulums that are just rampant, right? There's so many ideas that we don't want to agree with, right? The fact that, like, you know, violence is just a part of living in a city, or just anything that you can think of that is just accepted, and things that we need to start looking at to just be able to sort of not accept these things, or to accept them less, right? And to restate what you really want to believe about these certain things. So the way I handled it was I just said, and I think this is like a universal lesson that you can use and apply to any time someone says something that you don't want to accept, right? You don't want to agree with, and you don't want it to play out in your life, and you're just not accepting that as part of your reality, right? So I just simply said to him, that's an interesting perspective, but I just said, that's an interesting perspective, but there's a lot of ways to look at age, and there's a lot of other perspectives on it. And I explained to him, like I said in my age video on here, like basically 1 year can be like 10 years for someone else, and someone's 80 could be someone's 40. Time is so flexible in the quantum field. We don't have a set time. It's like years were not really meant to be years, and it was just a way to meet up with people. I've said this before, but it's not meant to be counting these years like we do, right? So 80 is like nothing. It's like saying nothing to me, right? When someone says, oh, they're slowing down, they're 80, it's like I'm never going to slow down, right? It's like I'm not accepting these sort of ideas that are just widespread. So anyway, that was the first thing. I think that was a good learning lesson, and I'm glad I said something and didn't just let it go it's almost like it goes open-ended. It sort of leaves it open-ended, and you don't state your own belief. So I feel like it's important to state your own belief about something in a nice way, not like demanding them to believe what you believe, right? It's just allowing them to have their own belief, but giving them a new perspective. And it can be helpful for the other person too, right? It's not just about you. So that was the first this life lesson from this week. And then the second one was about my mom and her not taking time for herself because there's people at her house and there's like busyness and she's really working a lot. And I was thinking like, oh, I feel bad for her. I was sort of like almost putting these thoughts or ideas about almost like just my thoughts almost as a judgment, but in a nice way. Like I was wanting her to take care of herself more. And I realized that this was a good lesson for me because it was really about me. It's like I was doing all these things for other people, or I was like doing stuff that I thought was important, but I wasn't really taking good care of myself. So it was more like, so sometimes when you look at other people and you're judging them for like whatever you're judging them for, like not taking care of themselves or taking too much care of themselves or whatever, whatever you're judging, sometimes it's a reflection, or I would say a lot of times it's just something that you are being pointed out to you. Like you yourself are pointing it out to you so you can learn something from it, right? Because I was like, oh, this isn't about my mom. This is about me not doing the things that I need to be doing, right? I was like doing all these other things. I was not focused as I needed to be. So anyway, that was the other lesson from this week. And I think these are really good lessons. But anyway, and then another one that came up this week about just like pendulums that was started when you were a kid. Like this is really interesting. It's something I study a lot about, just these sort of pendulums that were started when you were a kid. And maybe this isn't exactly how they speak about pendulums, but this is how I look at it, right? So like if you got into a certain pattern or a way of thinking when you were a little kid, you're gonna sort of evolve that thinking, and unless you switch it, right, you're going to keep going on that pattern. You're going to keep going on that train of thought. And it's the same with neurons in your brain. Like neurons that fire together wire together. You probably heard that somewhere in all this neuroscience lingo that's been thrown around. Like your neurons will start collecting, right? And your brain goes a traveled path and doesn't veer off that path unless you go in there and start shifting things around, right? Once a traveled path is created, it's going to keep, you're going to keep reusing that pathway in your brain. And so that's basically a scientific way of explaining how pendulums start, right? It's like this sort of idea that gets a foothold in your brain and it just keeps growing. So when you're a kid, these ideas can get footholds in your brain, and then you just keep adding to it as you experience more things, right? Like, oh, you have experience and you add to this thing because your experiences will support what's in your mind about something, right? Like, so this relates to an example where I was never told when I was a kid. I was just remembering never being told that anyone was proud of me, right? And I remember asking my mom, like, why don't you tell me that you're proud of me, right? Because I see other kids like because I was a good kid. I made really good grades. I was doing all these amazing things as a kid, you know, or really good things, right? I was always helping others. I was always, I had my own business as a kid. I was like selling stationery to elderly people in my neighborhood. Like I did all these interesting things and was a humanitarian at a young age. Like I was just very involved in the environment and doing environmental things. I don't know. I was just always doing something good in my eyes, right? Like I just felt like, why don't my parents tell me they're proud of me? And my mom said to me, well, it's because we don't want to, or she said, because I don't want to take ownership over what you're accomplishing. And I was like, but it's like nice to hear that someone's proud of me or whatever. Like I didn't really understand. Like I get where she was coming from, but as an adult, that pendulum started as a little kid, and then as an adult, I never learned how to be proud of myself. I was always searching for the next thing to do, right? And you may not have this exact same thing, but it's a really good thing to pay attention to and be aware of. And so now, in order to correct that off pendulum that was started when I was a little kid, I now like say I'm proud of myself, even for finishing a week or finishing a work project. Like I make sure to tell myself when I'm proud of myself. So I just thought maybe that could help you guys, because it's something that I do regularly that I know is like a little bit, you know, it's almost like reparenting, you know, that it's like a psychology thing, you know, that I'm sure you've heard about it, but it's similar to reparenting. Like you're telling yourself what you needed to hear or whatever. But anyway, I find it very helpful. And if you were never told you were like someone was proud of you, it'd be great. It's a great thing to do in the mirror or whatever, whenever you want to do it. But to just tell yourself, even I was saying, you know, whatever little thing comes up that you want to be proud of, you know, just like I'm proud that I remembered to put the right ingredients in the dogs, because I make this really complicated dog food. So I was really proud that I remembered to put all the right ingredients in her stuff, because I was like leaving certain ingredients out sometimes and then I would have to add them in later. But this time I was really proud I remembered everything, because it's just a lot to remember. Things like that, just little things that you could be proud of. And even if you were told that, it is still a good idea to tell yourself, because it's just something that keeps you from just going to the next thing, right? And not stopping and acknowledging where you're at. And so anyway, these were like 3 big lessons. I hope that this was interesting and the pendulum thing was interesting. If you like these sort of off the cuff videos, let me know. I don't know if the quality is okay, because I'm getting my camera fixed, so you know, that's why I haven't been filming, but I'm gonna have my camera back next week, so everything will be all good. But anyway, I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed, and if you love Neville changing your life and my unique perspective, stick around. I'd love to have you guys. Bye guys.